everybody? Welcome back to the Let's Talk question and answer show. This is the weekly show where I answer all of your burning questions. So I like to jump right into the show head first, mainly because this is your show. So let's start it off with the first question, and this one is from Laughing My Bay, and this is the last question I got in right before the show started. He wrote, "For your next question time, how do you rate 1 to 5 all the Halloween franchise movies, old and new, categories scary, confusing, timeline, and quality?" So I wasn't entirely sure if you wanted me to rate each of those movies on a 1 to 5 for each of the categories, or the entire movie from a 1 to 5, using the categories to help me get to that 1 to 5 rating. So that's actually what I did. So I just gave it a 1 to 5 rating for all of the movies. And of course, we're going to start it off with Halloween 1978. Considered one of the greatest slashers of all time, and of course is the one that really is considered what made the slasher genre really popular throughout the 1980s. Even though the movie came out in 1978, I'd give that one a 4.5. That one is still fantastic. I love that movie. You know, the acting itself isn't great, and I've always said that the movie starts off fantastic with the opening scene, and then of course the transfer with Dr. Loomis when he escapes and, you know, drives perfectly right out of there. But then it really has a real low for a little while before things ramp up again. But it's still a classic movie, has one of the greatest scores of all time, and it's one of John Carpenter's best films, and that one is a good one. And number 2, I give that one a 4 out of 5. That one's great as well. It's a continuation of one. John Carpenter doesn't direct this one, but it's still a very good, entertaining movie. Really cranks up the gore as well. Halloween 3, I give that one a 5 out of 5. Now, it would be like a 9.5 out of 10. I wouldn't give this one like a 10 star. It's not a flawless film, but as far as being a spooky season movie, as far as being a Halloween franchise film, even though it really doesn't count in the Halloween franchise because it's really a standalone film, but it's still my favorite. If gun to my head, my favorite Halloween film, it's going to be Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And it's a shame because it's the one that doesn't have Michael Myers in it, and that's who's tied to the franchise as a whole. As we all know, they wanted to do an anthology series. Michael's story ended with Halloween 2, and now we're going to have the Season of the Witch. You know, we're going to have the standalone story starring Tom Atkins and his mustache. And I love the movie. I really do. I'm entertained by it. I love the story of it. I love the main antagonist. I just love how it ramps up. I love the masks. It's one of my favorite horror movies of the 1980s. So, of course, I'm going to like that one the most. And then, of course, the Halloween franchise, the studio executives got some cold feet about doing that after the failure that was Halloween 3, even though now many people like myself love it. They decided to go back to the well. They decided to go back to what works. They decided to go back to Michael Myers. And that's how we ended up with 1988's The Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 4. And that one I would also give a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy Halloween 4. I would say it's definitely the best of like this second, what do they call it? Like the Thorn trilogy, this, 4, 5, and 6 trilogy. It's it's very similar to Halloween, the original one, especially how the story is structured, just at a quicker pace. And, Haddonfield kind of looks a little bit more fall-like, a little bit more autumn-like. So you can argue that this is the best spooky season Halloween movie. And I really do enjoy Halloween 4. But then, man, it goes right in the dumps with Halloween 5. Halloween 5 is just not that good to me. They just try and get too much into the Halloween lore. This is also at the very beginning. The guy takes in Michael, and then he's surprised when Michael, a year later, decides to kill him. Of course that's going to happen. It's Michael Myers. This is what he does. So Halloween 5 is still a entertaining movie. I don't hate the movie. I would give it probably like a 2.5 out of 10. I'd give that like a 2.5 out of 5. And then again, it just gets worse. Even though this movie actually is the first time we get to see Paul Rudd in a movie. So, the movie's kind of known for that. And that's Halloween 6, the Curse of Michael Myers. This one is just atrocious. I absolutely despise this movie, and a lot of people did as well. I give this one 1.5 stars. That led to H2O. H2O very much is living in the shadows of the Scream franchise and those meta horror films. This one's also a very short film. You're in and out with it. It's a very good movie. I really thought that this was going to kind of guide the franchise in a better direction when I was watching it at home. Obviously, I didn't see this. I was young. I saw this movie when it came out, but I was really young, and I wasn't like paying attention to the whole timeline of it all because, this movie's pretty damn good. I enjoyed it. I'd give it like 3.5 out of 5 stars. But they completely undo it with Halloween Resurrection and have us be just like, oh no, Michael's head didn't fall off. It was somebody else's head. And then he comes back and kills Jamie Lee Curtis right at the beginning of Resurrection. The only good thing about this movie is just how ridiculous over the top it is and how you get Busta Rhymes in there. Trick or treat, motherfucker. Like, that shit's ridiculous. But overall, as a Halloween movie, it's terrible. You got to give this one on 1 star. Then, of course, they decided, all right, let's do it. Let's reboot the franchise. We're going to bring in Rob Zombie. All the kids are loving Rob Zombie, right? So we bring him in, and he directs the remake of Halloween. And this one came out in the mid-2000s, right? This is probably the first one that started the whole remakes of all the classic franchises, because eventually we end up with A Nightmare on Elm Street in 2010, and 2009 we had Friday the 13th. But this was the first of them, and I really don't like this movie. I'd give this one 2 out of 5 stars. You know, it starts its own timeline with Halloween and Halloween 2. But, you know, we're trying to, again, explain what Michael is. In the original one, he's just called the Shape. That's what Michael is. He's just an entity. He is evil reincarnated. That's it. He's just walking evil. That's all he is. There's nothing more to him. In this movie, we try to explain that he just comes from the biggest white trash family around, just terrible, and that's the reason why he is this monster. And then the second half of the movie just becomes a remake of the original movie, which you should just watch the original one because that's still the best version of it. And then I would give 2.5 stars to Halloween 2, the second Rob Zombie one, because at least he was just trying something different. You know, and his movies, they all have a distinct look to them. Like, you can argue Rob Zombie is an auteur, not an auteur I particularly love, but you watch a Rob Zombie movie, you know it's a Rob Zombie movie. And I can appreciate him actually trying things with his Halloween movies. But still, I can't say I like them. And thank God this led to Blumhouse's trilogy of movies, which started out great. 2018's Halloween movie, bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis. This is a continuation of everything after the original Halloween movie. So, of course, this is one of those legacy reboots that we got. I really enjoyed this movie when it came out. The David Gordon Green trilogy, actually also co-written with Danny McBride. You know, we got John Carpenter on the score. The score to the 2018 Halloween is fantastic, and that started this trilogy of movies that eventually led to Halloween Kills. Now, Halloween 2018, I'd give that like 3.5 out of 5 stars, but Halloween Kills, I would actually give that 4 out of 5 stars. Really like Halloween Kills. You know, this is the one that feels like Halloween 2 in the franchise. Moves at a quick pace, really just watching Michael do his thing. We kind of get that quick attachment to characters like Big John and Little John, just to watch them get killed off. He's just blowing through people in Haddonfield. Now, you could argue in the Anthony Michael Hall character, Evil Dies Tonight stuff, that is ridiculous. I don't love that stuff in this movie as well. But still, I really enjoy it. I really think this is a fun one. This is one that I have to watch every year because it's one of the funner ones in the franchise. It doesn't have to be this big, grandiose, everyone loves this Halloween franchise of movies, because some of them are really bad in the Halloween franchise. But this one is just very entertaining, and it really set up Halloween Ends very well, where we thought we were going to get this heavyweight fight. We're going to have Laurie Strode in one corner and Michael Myers in the other. Everyone's excited for it. But wait, who's that? Oh shit, it's Corey Cunningham. And we bring him in, and he's going to be the star of this movie that nobody asked for. And we ended up with a Michael father and son movie. And I hate Halloween Ends. Given, to be fair, I haven't seen Halloween Ends since I saw it in the theater. But that was one of the more surprising movie theater experiences for me that I didn't love. So I'm going to give Halloween Ends a half out of 5 stars. It doesn't even get the full star. It hasn't earned a full star. But that's unfortunate, but still, the Halloween franchise overall, it's got this legacy that has lived on for so long. I love the franchise. I have to watch it every single spooky season, at least most of the films. 1 through 4 and Kills are guaranteed to watch, and I guess that's not even half of the movies, but still, every spooky season I'm going to watch those 5, and then sometimes I'll sprinkle in like maybe 5 or Curse, and if I really need a laugh, I'll throw in Resurrection. But that was a great question, buddy. Thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. And this leads perfectly into Emmanuel's question of, hey, John, is there another Legacy sequel you want to see that hasn't been done before? So, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Legacy sequels. One of the worst movies I ever saw, and one that just broke my heart, was Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels teaming back up with the Farley brothers to give us Dumb and Dumber 2 in 2014. That movie is awful. I hated that movie. I just thought it was, you know, it was horribly written. And the worst thing is a sequel can do, especially Legacy sequel can do, is devalue the original movie, and that 100% tries to devalue the characters from that one, make them actually seem dumber than they seem like in the first one. Like, they're dumb, but they're functional. In this movie, you're like, how the hell do these people get around? How have they lived this long? And that really is something that bothers me about Dumb and Dumber 2. So, hate that movie, but the one Legacy sequel, and actually 2 Legacy sequels, are the other sequels to the 1994 movies that Jim Carrey did. The Mask, I would love to see what Stanley Ipkiss is up to over 30 years later now. Well, I guess Yeah, over 30 years later. Now, I would love to see what he's up to. Has he found the love of his life? I want to know. And does he fall back in with the mask? Does the mask come back to him? Who knows? That would be a great legacy sequel. You know, the mask is based on a comic book series. You know, we can go pretty dark with this. Everyone loves a good comic book movie. There's an avenue there to get us a mask sequel, but then I would also love to see what Ace Ventura is up to. You know, they did do a sequel, When Nature Calls, which I argue is pretty damn funny. It's not as good as the original one, but it might be funnier than the original one. It's just not as good of a movie. And then, of course, there is that terrible sequel that I never saw that went direct to video, Ace Ventura Jr., where I guess he had a kid. We could ignore that and just make a simple Ace Ventura 3. And then another one that got me really excited after Top Gun Maverick came out, and I heard people were open to it, including Tom Cruise, was doing a legacy sequel to Days of Thunder, because Days of Thunder has always been associated with Top Gun because it has always been called Top Gun on Wheels, which is 100% true. That's exactly what it is. Tony Scott directed both of those movies. Maverick and Colt Trickle, very similar characters. They have to learn their lessons, and then they have to win the big one at the very end. And I would love to see what they're up to in this day and age, all of the main characters, because Robert Duvall is still alive, so we could have everybody come back, Corey Elvis, everyone come back and do a great legacy sequel. There's so many different ways they can go with a Days of Thunder sequel. Obviously, updating to modern NASCARs would be really cool to see how he's functioning in this modern world. Like, is he too old to be racing? Who knows? Does he own a team now? I mean, there's a lot of avenues you can go with Days of Thunder 2, and I really hope it happens. Days of Thunder 2, Thunder and Lightning.
I'll make a fool out of you.
That'll never happen, but still, I really hope it happens. There was actually a rumor it was going to happen. I didn't really put too much stock in it. You know, it's like the same thing with Edge of Tomorrow. When are we going to get that sequel? By the time we get that sequel, it'll be in legacy sequel territory, and Tom Cruise will be like 85, and hey, it'll still come out, and he'll probably still look the same age. That was a great question, Emmanuel. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that one. And the next one's from our channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato, and he asked, what do you think movies will be like in the next 100 years? How do you think they will change over time, and will they still make them? And he also asked, what do you think about the rise of negativity with the fandoms and the internet? So yeah, those are both pretty heavy questions. I'll start off with the first question first. And yeah, how do I think movies will age over the next 100 years? I do not think they will exist in 100 years, which is something that kills me to say, but just looking at how everything is trending now to more short form and like the rise of TikTok, and that just seems to be where the world is heading. We talked about it here in the past about how we don't see many cinephiles at a younger age anymore. Yeah, there are some out there who even follow this channel that are like 18, 19 years old that are care about the history of movies. There's some ridiculous takes from people out there who's like, oh, movies are too old, they look ugly and, you know, black and white. And, you know, there's people like me and there's people like you guys out there who care about the entire history of movies, who can go back and watch movies from the 40s, even try a silent film. But if we're not careful, we're going to lose film entirely. And that obviously is something that kills me. A lot of us were born in the wrong era. I mean, there's a lot of people who watch this channel who got to grow up in the 1980s, or not grow up, or like be adults in the 1980s when like cinema, I feel like, was like at its peak, like blockbusters every single summer, and movies were at like the center of the universe. At this time, movies kind of have to share the universe with like those short form things like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, where social media is king. And then you go over here in video games. There's nothing bigger than video games. I read something last week that T-Pain, many people know T-Pain, I'm sure. He's an R&B singer, a very good one. He said he makes more money playing video games and streaming it than he ever did as a singer. I'm sure it takes a lot less talent to play video games, but hey man, kudos to him. That's cool as shit that you get to play video games for a living. A lot of us would kill to do that. You know, that's really something that is at the center of the universe right now. I would say video games are much more popular than movies. Even television. TV itself is probably more popular than movies. A lot of people would rather binge watch something than watch like a marathon of movies. It's crazy to me, but that's just the world we live in. There's a lot more TV shows, a lot more streaming service that rely on TV series more than they actually rely on movies. And then also there's those miniseries that come out every now and again, like The Penguin is killing it right now. I myself are getting wrapped up in it, but I always prefer movies over those. But I really do feel like we're going to be becoming more and more the minority. So in 100 years, I don't think that films will exist. But how will films change over time? Just kind of like how films are changing over time now. We've seen comedies essentially die out at this point. Comic book movies are kind of starting to fade out themselves. Horror movies, through thick and thin, have survived since the 1980s. Even when you think they're out, 1996 rolls around and Scream comes out of there. So I do think that horror movies have always been steady business for studios. I don't know why they just for some reason don't get the message of, hey, you don't need to spend $100+ million on a film. You can spend like $10 million and you will pretty much recoup your budget as long as the movie is satisfactory. Instead, they want to put out satisfactory to below satisfactory movies out there that cost $140 million and then stand there looking at, well, what happened? I thought they wanted more of this. You just don't get it, do you? So that's just the big thing, is that unfortunately I feel like we're kind of getting more out, the studios themselves are getting more out of touch with their audiences are changing, and I really feel like right now we're in a bad place as far as, I hope I'm not too negative, because I still love going to the movies every week, but with the rising costs of going to movies, how it's cheaper essentially to stay at home and stream stuff, I think that physical media is actually making a little bit more space on people's shelves at the moment, actually. I think we might actually see a rise of physical media and people actually turning to the older movies. I heard that they do better in theaters than a lot newer movies, and I just think the quality of newer films has really dipped. Now, there are a lot of great movies out there. You just have to look for them. Strange Darling, I just finally caught up to that movie. That's a fantastic movie, clearly from people who love movies. They put right at the front of it, made on 35mm film. So movies I don't think will completely disappear, but they're going to be harder and harder to find. So that's a great question. And to move on to your next question, how do I feel about the negativity on the internet? Well, the internet itself in general, and especially with social media, the artist formerly known as Twitter, owned by Elon Musk, X, like nowadays, like X, if you guys saw recently, Jelly Roll, he's a country star here in the United States. I don't know if he's worldwide known, but he said he got off of X because it's the most toxic social media site in the world. I'm paraphrasing, I don't know exactly what he said, but that's pretty much true. Now, I've muted most things on there, and I try and just stay in my little physical media bubble and movie bubble, and even that, like, a lot of times we'll see people arguing on there. Earlier this year with the James Cameron stuff, like, that got like a little bit out of hand, I would say. You know, if people like the DNR, that's fine. Let them have it. We don't have to take that away from them. We just kind of lost our way, even just as a society, and this is a worldwide problem. A lot of people in America think this is just something that's solely an American problem, is that we can't disagree anymore. It's always just everyone has to get loud. Look at the Star Wars community. If people like The Last Jedi, that's a horrible thing to other people, and for other people, it's a horrible thing to like the prequels. Like, that's fine. Let people have what they like. On here I criticize movies, but if I criticize a movie that you love, I don't want to take that away from you. I feel differently about the movie than you do. That's fine. We can be like that. I don't know why society has come to the point where we can no longer talk to each other and just disagree respectfully. I don't understand how it got to the point where we're just shouting at each other, whether it be in politics or in our little bubble here with film and physical media. I don't know why it's so difficult. If somebody else thinks that a 4K Blu-ray release is awesome and you happen to hate it, I mean, you disagree. I mean, obviously, I would like a little bit of a reason. I think the best thing you could do is explain to somebody why you don't like something, and then, maybe they listen to it and they go, okay, all right, maybe you can change their opinion a little bit. But even if you don't, like, just, if you can logically explain why you like or dislike something, I think that goes a long way as well. Maybe that can go, but just saying like, oh, you're a piece of shit for liking that. Like, why? Why am I a piece of shit for liking it? Because you don't like it? Like, that's how the internet essentially works, and especially on these social media sites. So yeah, it really bothers me, and that's honestly, if you look at me on social media, I really just share the videos. Like, if you direct message me, I will respond to you, as long as, you're not being a troll or anything. I will never really go out there and put posts out on Instagram or X, like, just out there, because I try and stay off the social media as much as I possibly can, because I personally do feel like it's very toxic, and I don't want to get dragged into that at all. I just try and stay respectful to everyone. My biggest thing is I just want everyone to get along. I don't think it's that hard. I think it's pretty simple to be respectful to your fellow human beings, but it seems like a lot of us have a hard time with that, and I just want to be nowhere near it. For the most part, my channel has had some of the best people commenting on it. I go to other physical media channels. For the most part, everybody is very respectful and nice. So, there are people out there, for the most part, I like to believe are good people, respectful people. There's been plenty of people who I've talked to on this channel alone that I've disagreed with film takes with, and we've moved on with our day. Just like, hey, I understand why you like it. This is why I don't like it, and it's gone just fine. I don't know why it's so hard for other people, but it really is, and you don't have to take that. Nobody has to deal with that. If somebody is coming at you just shouting nonsense, you don't have to take it. It's just not something you have to deal with. But that was a great question, Mr. Smelly Potato. Thanks so much, buddy. I appreciate it. Here's a question from Wolf Viking. When is Trick or Treat 1986 being released on 4K? Not Trick or Treat. I want this movie more than any other movie this year. So yes, in 1986, there was a movie called Trick or Treat, not to get confused with the Trick or Treat that's actually getting an Arrow Video 4K Blu-ray release next Tuesday. Mine's on its way. Can't wait for it. That's one that I have to watch every single spooky season, so that'll replace my very old Blu-ray. I don't even have the Scream Factory Blu-ray. But anyway, Trick or Treat's a 1986 movie. It's really like a heavy metal movie. I've only seen it once. I know that Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne are in there, and I know it's got a big cult following. And Synops Films was actually supposed to release this on 4K Blu-ray at the end of 2023. It even has a Blu-ray.com posting, and all I can find is that, oh, I heard it got pushed back to spring of 2024, and that's the last I heard of it. So I don't know if it's completely dead or we just haven't gotten any information on it. Like, look what happened with Kino Lorber's Lost in Translation. That came to, that was supposed to come to 4K Blu-ray from Kino Lorber, but then that got completely canceled. Actually, a quick little update on that. I'm hearing it might be coming from the Criterion Collection. Now, that's just something I heard on the artist formerly known as Twitter, and like we just talked about, that's not based on 100% fact, but it would make more sense in the Criterion Collection. Actually, Rico Gomez, I believe, said that on last week's show in the comments that it would make more sense in the Criterion Collection. And it might go to the Criterion Collection. But from what I understand with Trick or Treat, the last update I could find is from earlier this year for spring of 2024. And obviously that's passed us by. But hopefully this gets a 4K Blu-ray release because, like I said, I know it's got a cult following. And clearly you want it on 4K, so I'm really hoping that for you. And I would pick it up if it comes to 4K. But thanks for that question. And the next one from Dark Room Reviews, very simple question as well. Gladiator in 4K question mark? Well, this is getting a new 4K Steelbook in November, I believe November 19th, and I'm probably going to grab that because I didn't actually pick up the 4K Blu-ray. Now, I don't know if it's an upgrade over the previously released 4K Blu-ray. I remember that came out the same week as Braveheart, and I grabbed Braveheart over Gladiator. They put them side by side, so I guess you guys know I like Braveheart more than I like Gladiator. But Gladiator 2 is coming out pretty soon, and it's getting rave reviews right out of the gate, as most movies kind of do now. That's kind of another thing with modern criticism is they invite a lot of people who are going to give these movies really high scores, and then once people and the rest of the critics start seeing it, you're like, oh, it's not as good as they said. It's still really good. So we'll see how those expectations are. The expectations right now are pretty damn high, but we'll see how they are actually going into the movie in a couple of weeks. I'm really excited to see it. I actually enjoyed Napoleon last year as far as the visuals of it. The plot itself was a little silly, but the movie itself looked beautiful, and I can guarantee you, without a shadow of doubt, this movie, as far as production design goes, is going to look absolutely gorgeous. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But Gladiator on 4K, I'm planning on picking up that Steelbook because I do want to own it and have it in my collection. I have to see, though, if it's an upgrade over that previously released 4K. But that's a good question, Dark Room Reviews. He has a great YouTube channel, guys, so make sure you guys go over to Dark Room Reviews and give him a subscribe. And Kevin Kruger asked us our next question. He wrote, what are some movies with great premises, but the movie fell flat? So I actually made a little bit of a list here, something like no particular order or anything like that. But the first one I want to talk about is a TV show. This show called Manifest. I'm sure a lot of people have caught up to it because I know it ended up on Netflix. They might even produce the last season. But the premise for the show, I loved it. I was like, I have to watch it. I hadn't even watched a network TV show in years because they just feel generic as hell to me. But then I was like, holy shit, this premise is awesome. They take off on a flight, and I can't remember what the exact amount of years are, but 15 years later, the plane lands. Now, for the people on the plane, it feels instantaneous. It just feels like they took a quick 3-hour flight or whatever. But for the people back on Earth, on solid ground, it's been years, and they're like, where have you been? The plane just kind of went through a time loop and ended up 15 years later. Such a good premise. Once the show took off from that, fell apart. Just felt like another generic studio TV show. And honestly, that really disappointed me because I thought that had one of the coolest premises. That would make a lot of sense in a movie, and it would be a fantastic movie. The other one, so as far as the movies go, one I actually grabbed, I have the Blu-ray for, because not every one of these are bad movies. I just think they're disappointing. And that's In Time. The same director of Gattaca directed this movie. It stars Justin Timberlake, who did an okay job. And the movie just has one of the coolest premises in the world. What's the thing that means most to us? A lot of people would say money. But the real currency for us is time. All we have on this planet is a limited amount of time. It's always going to be running short. Now, what if you could buy more time? Or what if you lose time? What if that was the actual currency of this planet? What if I gave you time for goods and services like we do with money? Very interesting premises. That's what that movie's about. It's just that the acting doesn't match up to the premise. It still has really good production design that kind of like, I don't know, I even know how to describe it. That like almost gothic but futuristic 50s look to it. If you've ever seen Gattaca, carries over to this movie. I just wish the acting matched up to it. Also, Cillian Murphy's in that movie. I should really point that out as a pretty good antagonist. It's a good movie. It's just that it could have been a great movie. That's what bothers me about that one. And it's the same thing with The Purge. A lot of people look at the Purge franchise right now as one of the better horror franchises in recent memory. I agree with that. The thing is, the first Purge movie is basically just a home invasion movie that stars Ethan Hawke, and it's a good movie. That's the other thing. It's a good movie, but this movie, we all wanted to see what the Purge was. We wanted to see it around the country, and not just in this one home. It's a cool premise, and they did live up to the premise in the sequels. The problem was that original film, I felt like just did not live up to the premise at all. It's fine. It's a good home invasion movie, but I didn't feel like it was anything special. You got a bunch of M. Night Shyamalan movies with a bunch of great premises. The Happening, about those killer plants. Could have been so much more. What's it remembered for? The absolute cheesy dialogue. Glass. We're finally bringing back Bruce Willis from Unbreakable, and we're also bringing back Mr. Glass, and we're going to have James McAvoy's character from Split. They're all going to be in the same movie. I mean, the anticipation for this movie was incredible, at least for me, because after seeing the ending of Split, I just couldn't wait for this movie, and I just felt like it should have been a bigger movie in scope than it ended up being. It actually felt like a very small movie, and how it ended up with Bruce Willis's character was just a huge disappointment. And then I know for a lot of people, now this one didn't bother me because I didn't expect it to be a good movie, and it turned out to be one of the worst movies, The Last Airbender, but there are people whose hopes for that movie were extremely high, and they were extremely let down by it. Now, there are some people out there who like that movie, like my wife. I just want to always point that out, because I have that movie in my collection, and it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for my wife. So that's a good question, Kevin. I really do appreciate that. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think is a great movie premise that just didn't live up to the hype? Leave those answers in the comment section below. The next one's from Sprazy110, and he asks, what's your favorite packaging you have in your collection? Of course, I forgot to grab them, so I had to go run over the shelf. And my favorite steelbook of all time is this Point Break steelbook that came out almost a year ago now from Shout Factory, actually. And I love this steelbook. And again, as I'll always say, the camera doesn't even do this 4K steelbook justice. It's absolutely beautiful. Combination of a glossy and matte finish. Just so beautifully done. This is what I mean about custom artwork for the collector, because the steelbook is really for the collector out there, and they did a beautiful job with the commissioned artwork on this one. Absolutely love it. I know the artist actually follows the channel, and again, fantastic work. But my absolute favorite packaging came from Vinegar Syndrome, and this came out 2 years ago now. And honestly, I feel the nostalgia for it every time I even look at the box, and that's Roadhouse on 4K Blu-ray. I love Roadhouse. It's one of the cheesiest movies ever. It's basically a Western set in the 1980s, and I love every second of this movie. I mean, my God, you're going to get a great Patrick Swayze performance. You get Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott without the mustache. He's got the beard. He looks like an absolute badass in this movie. Nobody's a better bouncer on the entire planet than Dalton. And this 4K Blu-ray is a huge upgrade over the previously released Blu-ray. I mean, it's stunning how good the 4K Blu-ray is, but the packaging itself, I mean, you come inside. First of all, okay, great. There's so much in here, so much reading material. So then also, you get a slipcover underneath. I can go on and on. I mean, it's amazing what we got in here. Now, of course, I got to put it all back together. But just look at all this. It's incredible what we got here for this one. This is like one of the Vinegar Syndrome, like, this is one of their best releases, in my opinion. It is their best release, in my opinion. Even though they have some great ones, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love that 4K as well, but this is one of their classic packaging. You know, they only whipped this out for a few different things, so it's literally the fine china in the world of Vinegar Syndrome. So that's why that is my favorite in my collection as far as packaging goes. And then Sprazy's other question is, can you show us your collection? I don't recall ever seeing it, and I commented back on this just to let everyone know, because I know the channel's been around for a couple of years. I actually do have a couple videos of my collection. I did a 2022 version of my collection, and then I did a 2023 version of the collection, and I did intend to do a 2024 collection video, but I just ran out of time. I meant to do it in July, and I couldn't find a window. Now I'm hoping to find a window in November, because after spooky season, I should have a little bit calmer November, so I'm hoping to find a window in there and give you guys a 2024 update, because my goal is to do an update of my collection for you guys every single year, because I know you guys do like those videos. They're a real pain in the ass to edit, but that's not a big deal. I like to do those videos myself as well. And it also gives me a good reason to cleanse the collection. So, I'll try and do one in November and give you guys a new update. But if for people who are wondering, yeah, there is a collection video out there. So if you want to see my entire collection, at least up to 2023, because I did buy a lot this year. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Probably more than I should have. I'm hoping to get that video out sometime before the end of the year. But that's a great question. And thanks for both questions, Sprazy. I always appreciate them. And the next set of questions are from Rogue1677. He wrote, one of the best Star Wars 4Ks without being DNR or awful and Atmos mix. So as far as the Star Wars 4K Blu-rays, I think far and above the best of them is still Star Wars A New Hope. That was the only one done by 20th Century Fox before Disney bought them. The rest of them, they're fine. I really don't have too many complaints, actually, about the Star Wars 4K Blu-rays. The only thing I have to complain about is that Star Wars is one of the greatest franchises of all time. The original trilogy is considered the greatest trilogy of all time, or at least in competition, so it's nowhere lower than 3 in most people's eyes. They deserve better 4K Blu-ray releases than what we've got. They have gotten some cool packaging and stuff like that, but the quality, the audio quality, and the video quality for the entire franchise deserves much better than what we have been given. That's the one thing, and with Disney being the owners of that franchise now, I don't expect us to ever get them in the highest of quality. Also, the original trilogy, they're always going to be the special editions, and that's really unfortunate because there's a lot of people, including myself out there, who want the original trilogy in its original format on 4K Blu-ray, but they're George Lucas's movies. I've said it once, I'll say it again. He can do what he wants with them, and apparently he doesn't want anyone seeing the original ones ever again. So if you have those VHSs, you're very lucky. I could have grabbed them, and I never have so far. And one of the best dramatic movies that will make you tear up. So there's always 2 movies guaranteed to make me cry. One of them is My Life, starring Michael Keaton and Nicole Kidman. Michael Keaton gets cancer in that movie. I've spoiled it here on the channel before, but just in case you haven't seen it, it's a very sad movie. I will break down crying every single time. And then Terms of Endearment, that's always my guaranteed crying scene in that movie, is when, she's dying of cancer in that movie. Her kids come in to say goodbye to her. You don't have a heart if you can make it through that scene without a tear at least shedding. But that'll break me. So those are the 2 I always say. If you need a good cry, and we all need a good cry every now and again, go to My Life and Terms of Endearment. So that was another great question, Rogue One. And then the last question you asked is, what movie on Blu-ray do you not watch and forget about? And it's funny is that would be In Time. Until I saw that question earlier from Kevin, I forgot about In Time, that I have it in my collection. I just always forget it's kind of in there. I always used to also forget about the Blu-ray for the Crazies remake. That's in there as well. I just bought the Blu-ray, like both of them I bought in like $5 bins. I bought the Crazies at Walmart years ago before I even had a 4K, and the same thing with In Time. I bought that in a $5 bin at Best Buy, so I think I might even still have the receipt in here. I used to keep the receipts. Yeah, I do. I do have the receipt, so I can tell you exactly when I bought this one. So this was on July 9th, 2014. So I bought this Blu-ray 10 years ago, and I apparently bought it for $7.99. So it wasn't $5 like I thought. It was $7.99. I used to always take the receipt and leave it in there just in case I needed to return it. I very rarely return things, so I don't know why I did that, but I did. That's something I used to do back in the day. So that's that's pretty funny. Great question, great question, Rogue One. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Next question is from Laughing My Bay again, and they wrote, what is the most you have paid for any release in your collection? And if you had a magic wand to create your own ultimate 4K film release, what would you be willing to pay? So for me, that magic number is $100. So for my ultimate 4K Blu-ray release, it'd be like a beautiful collector's edition of the Terminator with the arm. And if that ever came out, like, Terminator 2 had the arm and I didn't pay for the arm, and that's because the 4K release was atrocious. So I'm glad I didn't. But like, if you're giving me the best I can imagine 4K Blu-ray with the best AV and picture quality, and you throw in the Terminator arm, I'd spend $250 on it. That's the most I can ever imagine, and that's only for that product. Because really, I draw a hard line at $100, especially for one movie. Like, a collection, it's a little bit more understanding, but I can never justify over $100. I just don't have like an extra $100 for one thing. And the most I really spent on one item is the Frighteners 4K Blu-ray from Turbine, because it went out of print, and then Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, my buddy, he told me, he's like, oh, it's back in stock, you gotta grab it. And I think it was like $80, and I was like, I want it. I really do want it, because I love Peter Jackson's The Frighteners, and I had heard about this 4K Blu-ray and it being one of the best transfers around, and all the extras with the Blu-ray disc, because it's region free, 6-disc set. I was like, yeah, for a movie I love, I'll do it. I'll pull the trigger on it. And that was as far as I was ever willing to go as far as for one film. Now, the Columbia Classics Volume 1, I did have to have that on day one just because of the movies that were in that collection. And I believe I spent $144, I want to say, $145. I really can't remember. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys can go back and look and see what it cost on day one because I pre-ordered that one. So that was really the most I ever spent on like just a collection was Columbia Classics Volume 1, whatever that cost on day one. But really for one film, the $100 is really where I was far, even a collection nowadays. So like I made an exception for Columbia Classics Volume 1 because like the Cycle collection and stuff like that, it was only like $50 or $60. That's not too bad. I felt like I actually saved money on that one. But that was a great question, Laughing My Bay, as well. I really appreciate that. And then the last question for this week is from Emmanuel, and he wrote, "What's your most anticipated movie release of 2025?" And we haven't gotten too much announced or confirmed yet for 2025, but Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite, the Best Picture winner, Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson, actually just got its trailer debut, and it looks pretty damn good. I actually saw it when I went and saw Saturday night. They showed that trailer, and I try not to watch trailers, but this one actually looked pretty damn good. Bong Joon-ho, one of our great directors, so I know a lot of people are anticipating that one, including myself. So right now, that's at number one, but also the Brad Pitt Formula One movie called F1. That I can't wait for. I really think I think Brad Pitt kind of looks like an older F1 driver anyway, so I think already you got perfect casting, and I'm sure it is going to be expensive. Also, we're going to be getting 28 Years Later next year, the follow-up to 28 Days, 28 Months, and now we'll have 28 Years Later. This one's also been highly anticipating finishing that trilogy. Looking forward to that. But as far as this really hasn't been too much announced yet for 2025 that it is definitely coming. But as far as the ones that are confirmed, at least Mickey 17 is supposedly coming out in January. I'm going to guess it's going to have screenings in December so that it could possibly get nominated for an Academy Award because it's Bong Joon-ho, like the last movie he released, got the Best Picture. So he's a guy who has some very different films. So it's very surprising that Parasite actually did cross over and become that huge success that it did. Well deserved. I love Parasite. If you guys haven't seen Parasite, check that one out. But that was a great question, Emmanuel, as well. And I want to thank everybody who sent in questions for this week. I hope I answered them all. I still do have some questions to answer on next week's show, but thanks to everyone for sending in questions. I really do appreciate it. This is one of my favorite shows to do each and every week. I get to be like the center of attention kind of, so I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, guys, before we get out of here today, it is Friday. That means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video we do here on the channel on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one of those in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video. I put your name on a magic wheel. I spin that wheel 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And guys, it's the last digital code giveaway before Halloween, so I'm going to ask you guys 2 spooky season questions. What is your favorite horror movie of all time? And what is your favorite candy of all time? We'll have some fun with spooky season. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. Also, guys, we have channel membership, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin, or even a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you can find all of that information in the description below. But guys, if you have no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. I just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.